Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Portsmouth City Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, the leader of the City Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. A little bit of housekeeping. Thank you, Councillor Hunt, for yawning very loudly when I was saying that. I'm glad we've got you so engaged already. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room, public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. We've read the report, so officers will provide highlights and include any developments that have occurred since publication. Before we do anything else, we will go around the room and we will all introduce ourselves, starting on my left. Peter.
Hello, Peter Bowles, City Solicitor, thank you.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Lauren Coffrey, Finance Manager for Economy, Planning and Transport.
Richard Webb, Deputy Director of Finance.
Natalie Brammer-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Greening the City.
Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
So I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environmental Services.
I'm Darren Sanders, I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness.
Ian Holder, Cabinet Member for Safety in the Community.
Matthew Willington, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Good afternoon, Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Jane Lemaire, Head of Economic Development and Skills.
Steve Curtis, Funding Manager.
Adrian Rosier, Parks Development Manager.
Claire Watkins, Business Manager.
Jackie Clark, Cemeteries Manager.
Mark Wallow, Recreation Manager.
Natasha Edmonds, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you all, and we're also joined by the news this afternoon. Welcome, Toby, nice to see you. Okay, we are now on to item, item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. We have apologies this afternoon from Councillor Vernon Jackson, who is attending a hospital appointment with his husband. Any other apologies? No? Okay. So Councillor Vernon Jackson's apologies are noted. Item 2 then, any declarations of interest, members? Matthew.
Thank you, Leader. Item number 6, Community Inclusion Grants. Just to say, I work for one of the organisations that is getting a grant, but as this is an information-only report, this is non-prejudicial and non-prejudicial and non-financial, I think. I think that's what it is, but yeah, as it's on the information report, I have no part in the decision on making the grants.
Well, I've confirmed with the City Solicitor that is neither pecuniary nor prejudicial, so you're fine. Number 3, record of previous decision meetings. These are the Cabinet meetings held on the 28th of November and the 4th of December. Are we happy to accept those as true record of those meetings? Councillor Mason and Councillor Hunt seconding. Okay, we're going to jump around the agenda a little bit today because some officers have other commitments. So first, we will be going to item 9 on the agenda, followed by item 10 and item 11, all of which will be presented by finance officers, starting with Chris Ward. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So item 9 on the agenda, Council Tax Support Fund. I don't have anything to add to the report, but I'm certainly happy to take any questions that you may have.
Members, any questions or comments? No? happy to approve? No. Yes. Okay. Chris, item 10 then.
So item 10 is council tax premiums and second homes and empty properties. This report is here for your approval, but it also needs to go on to full council for approval. One thing to note in particular in relation to this report is that the full financial implications of this report are taken into account in the budget proposals that are the subject of the next item and also the subject of approval by full council. So worth bearing that in mind. In financial terms, it's an increase in council tax for the year 24-25 of circa 0.5 million, and for 25-26, when the second homes premium comes into effect, it's an increase in council tax of 1.1 million. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Hunt.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. No, it is really important that we do, even more than we have done in the past, or in the recent past at least, policy around second homes, empty homes, and homes that have been stood empty for a very long time. There are very many people looking for a home, so we have to understand that this is in that context. It's really important that we bring those homes back into use.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sanders, please.
Thank you, Steve. I would welcome this strategy. I approved an empty home strategy a few years ago, and that is up for review because we can't have too many homes lying empty for too long. And so I'm delighted that this is coming forwards as a way of actually incentivising people to actually get people into their homes. And if any further discussions need to be had to make sure the empty home strategy and this tie in, happy to facilitate them. But this is great work, and thank you for this.
Thank you very much. I can certainly think of at least 2 properties in my former ward in Central Southsea that every time I walked past them when I was chatting to residents, I thought what an absolute terrible waste of a 3-bedroom house that could be accommodating a family, and anything we can do to provide an incentive for the people that own those properties to let families move into them is definitely to be welcomed, and also the benefits of this in helping to support council services is also welcome. I understand, Chris, that the change from April 25 is because you were required to give a full year's notice before this is implemented. Is that correct?
That's correct, and we have 21 days in order to put that notice into the public domain.
Yeah, okay. So members have got 2 recommendations in front of us. One is that we implement the 100% premium second homes effective from 1st of April 2025, and the second that we resolve to implement 100% premium for properties that have been empty and unfurnished for a period between 1 and 5 years, which is a change to the current policy. Are we happy to accept both of those recommendations, noting that they will go through to full council for final approval? Yes, okay, thank you very much. In that case, we're on to item 11, Chris, which is PCC budget and council tax 2024-25 and medium-term budget forecast 25-26 to 27-28.
Thank you, Leader. Again, obviously, this report is for your endorsement and to go on to full council for debate and approval. Just one point to note in terms of the report itself, which is that the local government finance settlement was finalised yesterday and published, and there are no changes required to the report in that respect. So our estimates and assumptions were absolutely in line with the final settlement itself. Secondly, a presentation was given to the Scrutiny Management Panel last evening, and they have provided you with a couple of recommendations to consider, which I will read out. So I'll read out in full. It says, at the Scrutiny Management Panel, there were a couple of recommendations to Cabinet to note about the budget report as follows. 1, the Scrutiny Management Panel asks for assurance from Cabinet that the current proposals for the funding of the Bransbury Park Leisure Centre represent value for money and an acceptable level of financial risk. And secondly, The Scrutiny Management Panel asks for assurance from Cabinet that the Council's capital assets will continue to be managed in a responsible way so as to reduce the future cost pressures. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, it was nice of the Scrutiny Management Panel to offer endorsement of a policy that this administration is actually funding through its budget, which is exactly that, to ensure that we properly manage our capital resources. I just want to make it absolutely clear that's not their idea, it's our idea, they're just endorsing it. And with the second proposal, I happened to be present for the meeting last night, for my sins, and I was able to provide the assurances that they then have subsequently asked for after that meeting. So I'm slightly confused by that, but we will have an opportunity next week at the full council meeting, no doubt, to go into further detail on it. But both of their suggestions are noted and taken on board, and we have members, I think, no issue with either of them, since they're actually our policy. Are we happy with that? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Chris, anything else you wanted to add at all, or are you?
I look forward to the debate.
Okay. Lee.
Yeah, I'd like to kick this off. I have to say, you know, there's been a lot of hard work from officers, particularly Chris Ford and his team, and in the Cabinet. We've been through everything almost line by line. And what an upbeat, strong budget this is, coming from the administration. And when you compare that to what's going on around all the terrible news that's coming around from the United Kingdom, you see over at Labour-run Southampton, they seem to be in trouble from what we understand, and the Conservatives in Hampshire are running to the government cap in hand, and we consider the terrible cuts that the Conservative government have imposed on Portsmouth, and they've cocked up all sorts of things like the White Elephant, the border post, and a bunch of other stuff. We've still managed all of that within our means. This is a great achievement by the administration, together with strong support from officers right across the council. We'll go on later on to look at the things that we're doing around communities. We are delivering so many services that are not statutory requirements, including community safety and the community wardens, and including helping communities out in the community. A whole range of things. We go on and on and on about what we're doing here. So different to so many other councils across the country. And as I say, you know, I hope people give credit where it's due. We have all worked hard on this, as I say, and there isn't a whiff of worry here in Portsmouth about the budget, and it's great to see that the Scrutiny Management Panel understand that too. We will deliver what we say we are going to deliver on, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Members, anyone else? No. In which case, there was a couple of things I wanted to add. Just for anyone watching the live stream at home, we entered this year not expecting to have to make budget savings, but due to inflationary pressures and demand and excess demand on demand-led services, children's social care, adult social care, temporary accommodation, it's been necessary to find those savings. But we've done so without cutting any services. And I think we'll probably be on a long list of a handful of councils around the whole country that will be in that position this year. But it's something we don't take lightly. And what it does mean is that when we bring forward budget savings that we are proposing in order to make sure that we are structurally balanced as a council, we mean it and we implement those savings. What has happened around the country and lots of other places is that they've used reserves to smooth things out when they didn't take the tough decisions that needed to be taken. And now they are reaping the whirlwind. It's a terrible shame, because ultimately it means that vast amounts of council services all across the country are now being cut. But we learnt a long time ago to live within our means. but also make sure that we're protecting services. So we're protecting our finances and making sure that we are resilient. We're preserving our services because they matter to local residents, and through our capital budget we will be investing in the future because it's important that we do so. So I'm no doubt that we'll discuss this at much longer length next Tuesday. Matthew.
Thank you, Steve. And it's just something that I think what you said about managing things no matter what the circumstance. So just to put this in a bit of context, especially for anyone watching, is that we don't always know what money we're going to have until very, very late. So we only found out our public health, the thing that we got for public health last week. You know, we are, that was at the start of February, end of January, start of February. That's when we found out how much money we're going to have. That happens at every council in the country. This is the kind of thing that local authorities have to deal with and have to plan for very, very late. There is also things, which is some funding from the council we're not sure about in regards to NHS and for other parts of funding where we don't know yet what we're going to have. So this is a budget which is done as far-sighted with the information we can do at the time, but it might change. So we have to do, so even this, in our balanced situation that we're going to be doing this budget, as the leader said, without cuts to services, which is absolutely critical, but extremely unusual and painfully so, speaking to colleagues from around the country, especially when it comes to social care costs. But we are doing it in the right way. If anything else does happen, we will have to deal with that at the time. But we are in a much better state to do that than just about anywhere else. But it is, again, worth pointing out that we're on the 6th of February, less than 2 months before the end of this financial year, until the start of the next financial year, and we still do not have clarity about what money this council will have. And around the country, other councils, most councils are in exactly the same position. So it's just to put that in context for where we have to do things and why the incredibly thorough approach that is taken by our financial officers at this council, this cabinet in terms of scrutinising and working with those financial officers, and right across the council, all the officers who manage their services so amazingly well, puts us in that situation.
Thank you, Matthew. The only other thing I was going to add was about the our need to put up council tax by 2.99% and the social care precept of 2%. It's not something we do lightly. It is absolutely essential that we do that, along with, as we expect, it will be almost every other upper tier local authority who's responsible for social care, temporary accommodation, etc. across the country, particularly social care, creating that demand-led pressure on council finances. To not do so, we are advised by our finance team, led by Chris Ward, would create a larger structural deficit in our budget going forward. Members at last year's full council were fully aware of this and all voted in support of that strategy, and we hope that members will do so again this time, because to not do that will leave us in the same position as some of those other local authorities that we're talking about that have started to fall over. And if anyone wants to do a deep dive into the Southampton budget of February 2022, they'll see some pretty extraordinary things in there. And if anybody wants to see that happen in Portsmouth, then be very careful what you wish for. So there is a note of caution here that we are not proposing to embed these council tax rises lightly, but they are absolutely essential to make sure that we can continue to deliver the local services that people tell us that they want us to. To not do that would be poor financial management. I'm expecting some colleagues from one particular part of the chamber to argue exactly the opposite next week. So if any of them happen to be watching today, I strongly recommend that they listen to Michael Gove and his advice to councils that they should be careful about raising council tax whilst telling them that they have to do so, because that is exactly what he's telling us to do in order to get the funding that he knows that we need. So this is not something I say lightly, but it's hypocrisy. So, members, we have a lot of recommendations here, which I'm not proposing to read out in full because it will take me about 20 minutes, but you'll find them on the supplementary agenda starting on page 3. Have we checked those, and are we happy with all of those, including the passing everything through to full council for next Tuesday? Yes? All agreed. Thank you very much, Chris, and you can now disappear off to do whatever else it is you have to do. So we're now going to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Portsmouth Cemeteries Delivery Plan. And who's leading off on this? Is it you, Claire? Claire Watkinson, please.
Thank you, Leader. So we're presenting this plan because currently we have operational plans for our cemeteries, but we don't have a strategic vision. So this plan sets out that strategic vision. It covers the history, the current provision and demand, and considers 6 key areas, as you would have seen from the report. It looks at burial space capacity, green space, cemetery buildings, memorial safety, community engagement and customer interface. And they're all detailed in the report which you'll have read. And our plan is, if the draft is agreed, our next step is to put together and implement a consultation plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie or Mark. Did you have anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. So this is a part of the council that sits in my responsibility area. I think it's really important and timely that we start to do this piece of work now, so that we are future-proofing cemetery provision in the city. This will kickstart that consultation. We'll be going out to talk to all our key stakeholders, different faith leaders, faith groups, and different communities across the city to make sure that we have a plan that is supported. So this is to endorse that process. Members, have you got any questions? No. In that case, are we happy to accept the recommendation? We are. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, this always happens when I've got to dot around the agenda. Just give me a second. Number 5, that's the Parks and Open Spaces Strategy, which is contained in your papers from pages 53 to 206, because it's a very thorough report. Claire, I know you're going to present on this, and just before you do, it was raised with us this week that since the main draft of this was produced, we've now had the scrutiny panel's recommendations back on working to ever continue to reduce pesticide use in the city. Could we make sure that we add in reference to that into this strategy? Is that okay?
Yeah, and that's fine, because we've got some of the pesticides work in there from the year, but we can definitely update it. Yeah,
that's fine. In that case, over to you to present then.
Thank you. Yeah, so to recap, so we brought this strategy to Cabinet a year ago, pre-consultation. We've distributed it widely to local, regional, national stakeholder groups, and a list of these is found at Appendix 2. We promoted the strategy for consultation on council's social media and the website. We received 698 responses with overwhelming support for the strategy. There were some changes that were made subsequent to the consultation. We've emphasised links with other council plans, such as the climate strategy, greening plan, transport strategy, etc. We've also had, we've made some further amendments following feedback from some external bodies, including the Hampshire Countryside Access Forum and Natural England. And we also had comprehensive responses from the council's own public health and transport departments, and we've incorporated amendments following their responses. What we've done is we've taken the comments from the responses and we've provided a comprehensive report at Appendix 4. And the responses have highlighted a couple of things that we're going to action. We're going to review the park's webpage with clearer signposting online for opportunities. We're going to add, we have added further information about walking trails, and that's been incorporated into the final draft. And we're also going to develop an opportunity for donations. This has been added into the final strategy, and we've got a good precedent for this with the sponsored tiles in Victoria Park. I would take this opportunity to thank other departments across the council and external holders for engaging in the development of the strategy, and we hope you're happy to adopt it. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire, and a huge thank you from me for you and everyone that's fed into this great piece of work, and especially for the way the consultations taken place and for the positive feedback we've had for it. So much appreciated. Members, have anyone got any questions? Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, I mean, parks and open spaces very important in arguably one of the most densely populated cities in Western Europe. We know that, and to see like 59 local organisations consulted, 22 national ones, 18 regional ones, 7 neighbouring authorities. I mean, it's a tremendous piece of work from a limited number of officers. So I'd like to thank them for it. But as ever with parks and our cultural services, they do a tremendous job. And we can only look forward to even better parks and open spaces than now. And of course, we've got some big parks in train, particularly around the city centre, so things will improve. And it's great to see more bird and bee boxes and the initiatives around that, and planting more and more trees and protecting hedgerows as best as we can. But in an ever-changing city, sometimes things do happen, sometimes trees come down. None of us like it, but we have to remember we've got to build between 14,000 or 70 up to 17,000 new homes across the city. So even though we're adopting this, we're going to protect our parks and open spaces, but we also have to be realistic, because this government and any incoming government is still going to expect us to build homes. So we have to remember that, I think, when we, in the context of this strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
That doesn't mean we're going to build on parks, for heaven's sake.
No, we're not.
This will ensure that we don't.
What we're going to be doing in some of our parks, though, is renewing our play parks for families to access, particularly younger children, and we're also aligned to this will be the playing pit strategy, which is obviously set around our parks and open spaces as well, which we're also looking to refresh, and we're investing in that as well. Councillor Mason.
This was a very, very thorough report. One thing, however, which did jump out to me was which you see on page 149 of our papers, is the development of a skilled workforce. It does strike me that the using of apprenticeships here will benefit not just this council, but many other councils, because of the wide variety of different open spaces and parks which we have in this city. This is the one place which will provide them with a very good, very thorough training, and so we can benefit not just ourselves, but our neighbours.
Thank you very much. Members, anything else? No, in that case, noting the need to interface this with the pesticides work, are we happy to adopt the Parks Open Spaces strategy? We are, and thank you very much indeed. Item 6 is community inclusion grants. Natasha Evans.
Thank you. So this report is just to update the Cabinet on the Community Inclusion Grant. You will recall that applications were invited from community groups to apply for a grant of up to £1,000. The applications were open for a period of 6 weeks between October and December. 60 applications were received, and they were all assessed by a group of officers whose work involves working either in inclusion or at frontline work directly with communities. The assessment was also had representation from our voluntary sector via officers from the Hive, who then made recommendations for 32 projects to be progressed, and a full list of those is seen in Appendix A of this report. So those organisations are now being processed to receive a grant to progress some of that really important community inclusion work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and an excellent process that's seeing Over 30 local organisations benefit from that and continue some great work this year. Members, any comments or questions from you, Lee?
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of overlap between resources and what you do, Leader. So I'm glad you commissioned this report. I think what I'd like to say about it is that the process was geared to Miss Edmonds has described it very well, but just to add that it's geared towards sustainability, so that the inclusion money that goes out is looking at groups that can sustain what they're doing going forward, which is really important to give value for money for council taxpayers. But it also means that something like 30 groups didn't get what they were asking for. And we've had some discussions within Cabinet today and previously about how we will help those other groups to improve the way that they do bids, how they write bids, so that they have a better opportunity to do what they want to do. And of course, the discussion we had today means that we're looking at other ways to include community groups through other sources of funding. No doubt people will hear more about that in the near future. So sustainability is the key to this, to give value for money for communities and taxpayers.
Absolutely. Councillor Horton.
Sort of leading on from that, just a few things for me is one, I think it's great that we've been able to do these again. I absolutely confess that I didn't think so many people would take the time and effort to apply for a £1,000 grant, but I think that is indicative of a lot of the voluntary community organisations in the city and the hard times that they're experiencing, that they will go to that extent to apply for £1,000. So that's the first point. I think it's a massive success, and I'd love us to be able to continue to do that and support those groups. The second thing is, and I think it relates partly to what Councillor Hunt was saying, is that I think it's really important that this is not a judgment of those groups. This is about the quality of the application, but also it is a specific application. It's around equality and inclusion. So a lot of these groups, both who've been successful in this, but also groups that weren't successful, do a massive amount around the city, and should, and it is great that that so many of them have been successful. But it's not a case of highlighting those particular organisations over the others. It's just the quality of the application. And then finally, picking up on Councillor Hunt's point, I'm really pleased to see the strongest part of this report is that there will be support for those unsuccessful groups, because it's a bit like sometimes with a job application, you might be the best person for it, but if you don't jump through the hoops, you don't get it. And so it's about going back and giving those groups who weren't successful an opportunity for some feedback.
Thank you, members. Interestingly, there's two of the recipient organisations were brought together last week at an event that Susie and I were at, where we were at Southsea Library as our libraries celebrated achieving Libraries of Sanctuary status. It was great. That was 432 Nomads and Portsmouth City of Sanctuary, of course, who we've worked very closely with, and we're continuing to work with Natasha as we do some other work around making sure that we bring forward ourselves to be a council of sanctuary. We think we're a pretty long way there already, actually, so that piece of work's ongoing. So it just goes to show the reach and partnerships that do exist around the city, and I know everyone enjoyed the entertainment laid on by 432 Nomads at that event last week. So a wonderful set of beneficiaries, but as has been importantly noted, this wasn't about having winners and losers. It was about who met the criteria this year and how we can support everyone else who didn't to meet the criteria next year, and hopefully we'll be able to renew this process, because it clearly is highly valued by the community. So congratulations to those who have received funding, and a pledge from us to continue to support you to those who didn't. And I know that letters have already gone out linking people in with the Hive, and that they're going to meet with them on a one-to-one basis and work out how they can better support them in future. So all in all, that will be a process that creates a wider benefit because it should help them to better form their funding bids for a whole range of other potential funding applications as well, because what we want is a voluntary community sector in the city that's resilient and able to be independent as far as it possibly can be. So a great piece of work all round, and thank you to everyone who got involved, particularly the Hive, who supported us as our external partner and our conduit through to the sector. So it's a noting report, so members, everyone happy? Nobody got any other questions or anything? No, in that case, thank you, Natasha, for coming along today. And we are on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 2 Interim Report. Who's presenting? Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. This paper is on the Year 2 spend of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, also known as UK SPF, and UK SPF replaces European social funding, but it should be noted not to the same level, but it is designed to replace it. It is not money that we bid for, it is an allocation that is given to us based on a funding formula. We submit an investment plan to government of how we will spend that against 41 broad spending lines, and then each year we bring forward projects for that money to be spent within those funding lines. You'll note in the year this report is for, Year 2, we have 345,000. And next year it jumps to 905,000. That is because a number of skills and employment programs come to an end. That's why our allocation goes up. That's not our split, that's the government split, the allocation. So that increase in funding is to replace those funding programs next year. Although it sits within economic development and planning, it is a cross-directorate spend, so we work with colleagues from across different directorates. So you'll see in the Year 2 projects and some of the ideas for Year 3, a broad range of projects from across different directorates in the council. We have a small, modest admin fee to help us process the fund, and we've just recently submitted our recent spend plan and outcome plan to government, which they're happy with our spend to date and our plans. It should be noted that Jane Lemaire's had contact with other colleagues from other councils that are having trouble spending their money, but we're on track to spend within year. Any questions?
Jane, Ian, nothing else you wanted to add? No? No? Okay. I have to say, I've seen lots of things come out of governments over the years. This thing's bonkers. I remember the first time I was ever briefed on this a couple of years ago by yourself and Jane, and I can't ever recall something that starts off with peanuts, adds a few more peanuts, and then adds a few more peanuts over successive years. It's just weird. And the structure that they put around it also looks to me like something that was designed by a bunch of people in a pub after several drinks. So I want to say thank you for your huge amount of time and effort in navigating what is clearly a ridiculous process and getting the best out of it, because that's what you've managed to do. And that's a little short of miraculous, to be perfectly honest, given what we inherited at the beginning of the process and how it was all described and laid out. So I'm not surprised that some people have found it difficult to spend the money, because they probably inadvertently put it in different subject headings that subsequently turned out to not make sense, and we've avoided that. So a huge well done and thank you. I do obviously it's something that we've worked through in detail. The bit that I've seen pay a particular dividend this year was the creative industry support work that we put in with that fund that we allocated to Portsmouth Creates. I understand that 30,000 investment has already leveraged over £250,000 worth of external match funded development into the city to support the creative sector. And when you put that on top of the 1.1 million that we assembled through the partnership with the City Council, Victorious Festival and the University and the Arts Council 650,000, we're getting close to £1.5 million investment into the city, into our cultural and creative industries over a 3-year period, which is huge. So it just goes to show, if you can get under the skin of this thing and get the money in the right places, you can get the outcomes. So thanks to you guys for everything that you've achieved so far. It's worth having a look through the report. There are some of the outcomes noted in there, and we're making very good use of what is actually a fairly frugal amount of money compared to what we used to get from the European Social Fund. But I'm sure there are people in the world who still think Brexit was a good idea. Members, any comments or questions?
Thanks, Steve. Just a question to start with. Do we have any indication of any funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund from 2025 onwards at this moment?
So at this time, we don't have any indications what will happen after year 3. It will obviously depend which government is in play, and we think we're unlikely to hear before an election. So that's obviously a national concern. Various organisations, including LGA, are taking that up and pushing it forward, but we will need to respond swiftly when decisions are made.
Yeah, I think it's worth, this is a bit like the whole of the levelling up agenda. If you imagine that you've got an inflatable bed that's quite comfortable to lie on, or your neighbour has, and the one you're lying on is in desperate need of having some extra air added into it, levelling up effectively seems to mean that you get somebody with a foot pump to frantically pump it up to the same level as your neighbour's bed, and then you go and let the air come out of it again. This isn't levelling up. It's not. They're calling it, so it's levelling up agenda. An agenda usually has some structure to it and a flow through it. This is just randomly throw things at a wall and see what sticks. And this is just one example of it. So the fact that there's no plan beyond this year should come as no surprise to anybody, because there's no plan for almost anything beyond April 2025. Apparently, we're all going to disappear into a different Whovian universe. For those of you who are fans, Matt, did you want to come back in?
Thank you. And again, as with others with Steve, what a surprise. I mean, it's something that is just ridiculous. But you know what? Isn't it interesting? At least we had a 3-year plan for funding for this, which is more than can be said for what the government does with social care. 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. Just about everything you do, it's 1 year funding. When it's pittance, when not only is it pittance, but it's a reduction on what you used to get from the European Union, oh, they can do a 3-year plan, albeit a pittance 3-year plan, of which I'd like to echo my thanks for all of the officers, especially Stephen and Jane, for working on this over the years and delivering what we are. But it is just a classic case of government yet again coming up with a formula that doesn't seem to make any sense, screwing over this city again on top of the £6 million for the border control post.
7.
Oh, it keeps going up. How high can it go? How high can it go? But again, they cost us money because we don't matter. To this government, this city does not matter. They don't see it as something that they can try and buy off for votes. They don't see it as somewhere that has real structural needs. Whereas when we were in the European Union, it was regarded as somewhere that did have that need and did need that support, and also a key place in the economy, not just of this region of England, but also cross-channel as well. Indeed, we know that in France, our partners in Normandy, they know how important our links to France are and that economic cross-channel economic thing is. Over here, we get crumbs from a table. So thank you for all the work that's been done on this, but yet again, it's another example of our city being screwed over by the government.
Thanks, Matt. Just a couple of things that are included in the report that I'm going to shine a light on. The student enterprise project that we did with Hampton South Downs College. I was actually at the We Create market in Cascades at Christmas, and I met several of the students, and one of whom's gone on to be have a very successful year at college in developing out a product. And there's a press release going out this week, I think, about how successful she's been. But just to give, it was £850, but it reached into a bunch of students and gave them the opportunity to expand their creative practice and their creative vision in a way that they hadn't been able to do before. So they made products and brought them to a marketplace and sold them to members of the public at Christmas. And you could see the amazing change in confidence that they gained from being able to have that opportunity. Now, it may be that none of them goes on to run a business or even develop their creative practice, but it's helped develop their soft skills. It's put them in a position where they understood what having a retailer and customer relationship was. And these are invaluable life skills that we've been able to deliver through having a bit of imagination and the way that Steve and Jane have worked together to target some of this money. So that was a really strong outcome from that very small project, and one that we want to be able to do again. And also for those, and I'm going to look in your direction, Toby, from the news, who are looking at the future High Streets project work that we're doing on Commercial Road, I've been absolutely clear that that is a first baby step towards a much bigger piece of work that needs to happen, where we are not a landholder in Commercial Road, but we need to be influencing and supporting and partnering with people who are, and the retailers down there, to create change. One of the ways we'll be doing that, if you might remember recently, we had the new market strategy come forward, and that will be intrinsic to it. Some of this money has been was allocated to improving the branding around the market stalls going forward, so they've got a more of a unified appearance, but also a pop-up shop that we've developed in partnership with Cascades and Flood, with the first occupant on pretty much on site, I think now, aren't they? Or next, is it a couple of weeks?
Just a week's time.
It's a week's time. They'll be on site and trading, and that will help independent retailers to develop their offers and find out whether retail is for them and whether they think they've got a product range that will be resilient enough to go into a permanent site. So growing our own and moving away from underinvested in national chains that had failed is the way to do it. I personally don't bemoan the passing of chains such as Debenhams, because they'd become an identikit on every high street. If we're going to get footfall back onto our high streets, we need to be delivering new experiences, and the key word there being experience. It's got to be experiential for the consumer. They're not just going to go and walk around a shop that they could visit on any one of 100 different high streets anywhere in the country. They want a unique experience, and we can help to augment that offer and improve it so that gradually over time we can make an impact on a part of the city where we are not a landowner, but we can be a good partner. And linked to that is the city building site, which is the old job centre site at the end of the northern end of Commercial Road opposite McDonald's, and there's money in here being used to bring that in as our new enterprise centre as a meanwhile use, and Alan Lowe's been doing some exceptional work on that as well. So these are all small interventions that over time we need to keep doing to try and change the narrative around Commercial Road. Those who want us to wave a magic wand and it all looks like some great 21st century improvement, it's not going to happen because we don't own it. And actually, if you look at some of the massive public sector interventions that did happen in places, for example, like Birmingham, where we already know the council's in trouble, but we know that a massive landmark Knight and Lee store went into that city centre and is now being converted to housing. So it's about not making the wrong decisions and about not pushing too early. I know I don't normally give a speech on these occasions, but this stuff matters. And also, we're here till 4 o'clock, whether we like it or not, because some young people are coming to see us. So we don't need to hurry today. So thank you very much indeed. We're noting that, I believe, because it's already all been agreed by the government. But thanks for the update. And could you give us an interim update at some point during 24-25 so that we know how it's all going? Thank you very much indeed. And thanks for being here today. Right, round 8 of today's proceedings takes us to supporting residents with the cost of living, and we're over to Mr. Mark Sage.
Thanks very much. So I'm Mark Sage, the Tackling Poverty Coordinator, presenting this report to provide an update on work against the Council's priority to improve lives by helping residents with the cost of living, to highlight the impact if the government decides not to extend Household Support Fund grant to local authorities from April 2024, and to make recommendations for the Council to continue to provide support to residents with the cost of living. So the report outlines how the Council's responded to the ongoing cost of living crisis, and how the Council's provided information, advice and support, including financial support, to help residents who've been affected. Appendix 3 includes an outline of how we're using Household Support Fund this year to help Portsmouth residents. And Appendix 2 includes a letter from the leader to the relevant ministers, highlighting again what the impact would be of having no further Household Support Fund in the next financial year. So the recommendations of the report include a plan to ensure that cost of living support can continue from April, which is outlined in Appendix 1, subject to the Council's budget setting process, and also to be reviewed in case of any announcement from government on any further Household Support Fund grant or similar funding for local welfare or cost of living support. And the report asks Cabinet to delegate authority to the Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services for implementation of the plan and adjustments to the spend to ensure that we can respond quickly in case of any late announcements from government. And it highlights the need to continue working in partnership to provide cost of living in support, which is both in working cross-directorate across the council, but also with other partner agencies and the voluntary and community sector, who play an absolutely essential role in supporting residents in financial hardship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for bringing this very important report to us today. I've got some things to say. We're going to members first. You've had enough from me for a while. Darren?
Thank you, Steve. Just also to add to the report that if this survives the Council's budget setting processes, money from the housing revenue account will also be set aside to help tackle the cost of living. Amid the hullabaloo of the autumn statement, one of the interesting things was the thing that wasn't said, which was the continuation of the Household Support Fund, which has been for the last few years providing a great deal of help and a great deal of incentive for many of the most vulnerable people who live in this city, many of whom live in council housing. We've provided vouchers to help people with free school meals. We provided holiday activities. We provided help to pantries and larders. We've done a whole raft of things with that money. And one of the things in the autumn statement is that that money wasn't there. We live in hope that it'll come back, which is why we've included a bit about if things change. That may be next week. That may be in the March 6th budget. We hope that the government will abandon this stupidity of not trying to offer one final round of help to some of the most vulnerable people in this city. It isn't a case of national politicians letting down Portsmouth. The government has clearly decided to let down people in Portsmouth because it's not continuing with this fund. The Labour Party is saying it will not increase the amount of money to local councils. That means that, again, this fund is highly unlikely to continue. That is appalling. And that is why we as a Liberal Democrat administration are stepping in to try and help where we can. As I said, we live in hope that politicians change their minds, but we're not expecting it, which is why this is here. And so today outlines a series of principles on which we will work. And I want to draw people's attention particularly to the first one, which is grant funding for food support services. In that bit of jargon lies pantries, larders, food banks, people who have been helped by this fund, by us, distributing this fund over the last few years. It is a disgrace that we have to rely on food banks and larders and pantries in the 21st century when we're Britain's 6th biggest economy, but many people do. And the people who run it are heroes. I have to say I've authorised one in Portsgrove because it was important that many of the poorer people who live up there actually have this access. In my own ward, former councillor Jeanette Smith, Sue McDermott and the team who've been running the pantry in Baffins have done a sterling job. And we as a council have helped them move into bigger premises. Baffins councils have helped funding putting up shelves for them. And yet they say the demand is increasing. And Conservatives in the north of the city have been praising the work that they have been doing funding pantries. Well, as a result of their autumn statement, they are cutting them off at the knees. We will not do that. That is why we are prepared to step in, if necessary, and help them through the cost of living crisis. One of the things that's crucial is that by investing in people, you can be able to preserve their dignity by protecting them from the impact of the cost of living. And that applies to slightly richer parts of the city as it does to slightly poorer parts of the city. Too many of our people have suffered for too long. And I'm disappointed that national politicians in the Conservative and Labour parties are not offering them hope. Well, this Liberal Democrat administration is prepared to offer them at least some hope. We hope national politicians will change their mind. We hope they won't be as stupid as they are. But if they continue to be that, then at least we as a Liberal Democrat administration are fighting for people in Portsmouth and stepping in to make sure that our pantries and our people are not cut off at the knees. I'm delighted to support this leader.
Thank you, Darren. Councillor Horton.
Thank you. Thanks to Mark for all the work that has gone on to this. I was just sitting here reflecting, thinking all around the country, council officers are spending so much time trying to make sense of this, because there's a theme emerging, isn't there, about the lack of stability, the lack of commitment from the government to actually allow councils to make longer term decisions about how to support. If you add up all the time that's taken on trying to tease it out, it probably could pay for a lot more, much more support. But I just wanted to, well, there's a couple of things I wanted to, a couple of themes that come out of it for me. One is the giving and taking, not just giving the grant, taking the grant, are we going to have it? Oh, it's like the okie dokie, isn't it? But also it's things like, for example, in Portsmouth, I've just come from a family hubs launch. So we get some money from the government from that. But if you look at a net situation, if you look at the amount of money that was taken out of the city through Universal Credit Cut, for example, and you add this in, and it smooths its way out, there is no doubt about it. A city like Portsmouth, which is quite poor, in compared with other places, has become poorer. And we have an amazing commitment, we have an amazing heart in this city and will to give, but actually these are really, really tough times. And I think the reason we are managing as well as we can do is because of the long-term stability around relationships, our relationships with the voluntary and community sector, but also relationships and partnerships that are going on day in, day out, week in, week out. So I know I've gone slightly off a tangent, but there is a theme throughout this whole meeting. How on earth are local government expected to make sensible long-term plans for the benefit of the people who live here without some kind of clarity, and to not know whether this funding, so we've got a paper that we're taking here that we don't actually know whether that's going to continue, whether that cliff edge is going to come. I think it's totally irresponsible, but thank you to the people who, despite that, make all the difference.
Thanks, Susie. I think you've highlighted some really important things there. I mean, there's been a few articles over the last week or so highlighting that the current council tax banding system is so far out of date that it often means that that not only are people inappropriately advantaged through after their properties have gained hugely in value over more recent years, but it's also fundamentally the case in this country that the areas with the most valuable properties get the most money to spend on services, and the areas with the least valuable properties, and therefore the most likely areas of poverty, get the least money to spend on services. It's completely crazy, and let's all remember that it was only put in place in a hurry in the first place when the poll tax resulted in riots in London. Isn't it funny what happens to Conservative governments when they get towards the end of their lifetime? Hopefully. Appendix 1, Cost of Living Support Plan 2024-25. Just want to draw your attention to that. That's what we are saying that we will try to make sure happens if this cliff edge does happen. It's really important to note that the households, this is again typical example of how stupid this is. All the money from the Household Support Fund has to be out the door by the end of the financial year, 31st of March this year, I believe. Full stop. That's it. It stops on that day, including the support officers who actually manage it all and get it out the door. So it's all got to stop on one day, and we'll only find out if it's not stopping on that day 3 and a bit weeks before that day. So that's where we are in terms of short-termism in the UK right now. It's absolutely appalling. I've come across another scheme this week where just because the government just hasn't announced anything about it for so long, several organisations are just going to have to make people redundant because they've got no idea whether they're going to get any funding after the 31st of March. So if the funding comes in, they'll have already let the people go. And it's the way this is all happening is completely and utterly unacceptable, and not just something that we as a Liberal Democrat council in Portsmouth are raising objections to and shining a light on a weekly basis. This is something that councils of all colours right across the country are collectively shouting at government and saying, enough, you have to listen. And then when they do listen a bit and they give us an eighth of what local government was actually asking for to address the shortfall. We're asking for 4 billion, 500 million was allocated, plus 100 million for non-unitaries, the non-social care rather. The answer is, well, we've just given you some money, as if the other £3.5 billion doesn't even exist. And Michael Gove, I know you're not listening, but stop writing me stupid letters. The recommendations then, Cabinet, are the numbers 1 to 6 on pages 2 and 3. I'm going to read out just the last one, but roll in the previous one. Thanks to the cross-directorate working group, but also note a special thanks to the team across the council who delivered support to residents affected by the cost of living crisis, and to the council's Tackling Poverty Coordinator and Household Support Fund delivery team who have administered the HSF in 23-24, the setting up of a delivery team, designing application processes to deliver the grant to households throughout the city, and the same financial year the grant was received as noticed in as exemplary work. So Mark and the team, thank you very much indeed. It is hugely appreciated, and as I've already said, the fact that you have to get it all out of the door by the 31st of March is a big pressure, but we know that you are on course to do that, and it is appreciated. So members, noting that one recommendation particularly, for obvious reasons, are we happy with the other 5? So all 6 recommendations are noted and accepted. Mark, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your ongoing work on that. That takes us to, members, you'll remember we've done 9, 10 and 11 already at the front end of the meeting. We're now over to integration of LEP functions into upper tier local authorities, and I'm assuming that's going to be Paddy.
Thank you. So the integration of LEP functions into upper tier local authorities is a significant opportunity, and if we can get it right, it can support our devolution ambitions for the Solent area. There are 3 main areas of work that are being integrated into the upper tier authorities, which is sort of detailed in paragraph 3.3. This is namely business representation, strategic economic planning, and the delivery of national programmes where the government directs us to do so. And at the moment, that's the careers hubs and the growth hubs. Hampshire County Council have already said that they don't want to work with the other authorities in the Solent area on the Solent geography. So to enable us to take advantage of this opportunity and to meet the criteria threshold set by the government, we've got to work with both Southampton City Council and the Isle of Wight Council. So we've got close engagement with officers and members from those 2 authorities. We're also engaging with colleagues from the Solent LEP. We're still waiting to hear from the government to confirm whether our proposed geography of the 3 unitaries is approved. I spoke to a colleague from DLUC this afternoon who said we expect to hear within the next week. 3 weeks ago, we expected to hear within the next 2 weeks, so I'm not quite sure when that will be. It is a complex area of work. It's made more complex for Portsmouth City Council because we are also the accountable body for the LEP. But because it's so complex, we are seeking external legal advice to help us understand how we can legally work with the LEP or their successor body, Solent Partners, going forward. Work is ongoing and subject to hearing from the government. Recommendation 2.1.9 gives delegated authority to the leader of the council and the chief executive in consultation with the Section 151 officer to agree the final details and the governance. And also just to say that an equivalent paper to this is being taken to both the Isle of Wight Council, which I believe is today, and to Southampton City Council in March. I think Ian is just going to pick up some of the governance issues.
Ian Maguire.
Thank you. I can do, just to reinforce really a couple of the points that Paddy's made there. We are still seeking some legal advice on the governance. There is an indicative structure in Appendix 1 to your papers that is subject to a certain form of governance that may come out. Other forms are available, and that will be settled through that delegated discussion. So, as Paddy highlighted there, we don't yet know whether we will be allowed to integrate these matters into Portsmouth, Isle of Wight and Southampton. We've advocated that, and we've been given some assurance, but nothing binding. So it is quite last minute. We will know in mid-February, apparently, and we will then have the appropriate 6 weeks to make the necessary changes to those staff who are PCC staff who work in and with the LEP to deliver these functions at the moment. So there will be a lot of fast work, and we appreciate the delegation from members to officers to deliver that.
Thank you, Ian. I think that the narrative I'd like to ensure that everyone is aware of is just how closely the three unitary authorities have worked together on this. I'd personally like to thank Satvir Kaur, who was the previous leader over in Southampton, and also Laura, who was the previous leader on the Isle of Wight, for their work at the start of this process. We've also got Julie Jones-Evans, who does the regen role on the island and sits on the current Solent Let Board with me, and we've got Lorna, who's taken over from Satvir in Southampton, who has now replaced her on the Let Board. So there's been some moving chairs along this, but the thing that hasn't changed throughout is our absolute determination to stay strong and united as three local authorities. The conversation's been grown up because we all know that we want eventually to see the right kind of devolution for the Solent area, and we want it to be on the Solent geography. So it's important that we show that we mean that and that we can work together in a grown-up way, putting aside our individual number one priorities, as it were, to make sure that we have collective priorities, because people don't live and work within unitary boundaries. They live and work across a broader geography. They don't enjoy their leisure time just in the place where they happen to live. They go to other parts of the area. And building all of that as a brand and an opportunity for expansion around growth and skills and jobs and tourism and transport and all the things that matter to everybody around that Solent brand and geography is really, really important. So the fact that we've had really grown-up conversations, and even when things are getting in the way, as Ian said, we're still waiting for some legal advice to tell us whether we can even do what we want to do. We are being resilient and pushing forward. So a massive thank you to colleagues in Southampton and to officers in Southampton, and similarly for the Isle of Wight, for the very collegiate and collaborative process that we've had in getting it this far. You will note that the report has some caveats and some what-ifs in there, because by necessity it needs to at this stage. But the fact that we've got that level of collaboration showing that we can work together in partnership for the good of the region, I think is something to celebrate, and I just wanted to make sure that I'd drawn your attention to that today. Councillor Sanders, please.
Thank you, Steve. I would agree with that. I mean, the fact that three different political colours, as it were, can actually work together, because it understands as we emerge from the cost of living crisis, the Solent region has got so much potential, and that means working together. And that sort of cross-party collaboration is in stark contrast to Britain's most miserly council, as per that bastion of socialism, the Daily Mail, which is Hampshire, who believes that the future is county-wide. And it can't see that part of the issue in the county is around the Solent. Part of the issue in the county going forwards is around the Thames Valley and around the M3. And those can be two fantastic engines of growth that don't fit in with within those upper tier boundaries that you mentioned, Steve. And also the short-termism of the Conservative government as well, because they're the ones who've been focusing on trying to disaggregate the resources to individual upper tier authorities, which means Hampshire, for instance, has benefited to the tune, I understand, of more than £12 million. Now, that money has got to be spent in the Solent area, in the LEP area, on projects that are related to the LEP, which is why I think your proposal, or the three councils' proposals for a Solent Economic Partnership, that involves the Misley Council that doesn't seem to want to help us at the moment, as well as local stakeholders, is incredibly welcome, because we've all got to work together to try and get people out of the cost of living crisis and into the future. I think the future does lie around the Solent region, huge amounts of potential, huge amounts of untapped potential in this area, and I'm delighted that we are all working together, and I hope that others will do so either, rather than use the extra money they've got to fill their budget gap. I welcome this proposal, Steve.
Thank you, Darren. You're right to shine a light on that, and I do have some very significant concerns about exactly where that money is going to end up, considering that it was granted in the first place for use in the Solent. I think it's worth noting that whilst the county councillors in the areas of the districts and boroughs that are part of the Solent LEP may be supporting the leader of Hampshire County Council, the leaders of those councils have a very different view. So there is some cutting across local democracy here, and just because the government says you are now responsible to somebody doesn't mean to say that that person who's responsible should close their ears and not listen to the people who live in the areas that they're responsible for. So our pledge has been that we will carry on working with the districts and boroughs wherever the opportunity arises, that certainly wouldn't rule out future collective funding applications across the geography, how we deal with the skills agenda, etc. It's all very interlinked. Just because somebody's hell-bent on going off on their own and sitting in a room sucking a thumb doesn't matter to the rest of us. So he can do that as much as he likes. And I'm not saying anything that I haven't said in far more public forums than this one. So members, are we happy with the recommendations of 1 to 11? As we've heard from officers, the other two councils, Southampton and the Isle of Wight, in their normal cycles, so Isle of Wight happens to be today, I believe the Southampton one's 1st of March, is it, Ian? I think it's that first week in March anyway, isn't it? And that will conclude the process for all three of us, which means we can continue to work together along this narrative, but we are still continuing to meet on a regular basis and have discussions anyway. The governance team, I think, for example, this week I've agreed that Councillor Filker will replace Councillor Core on that. There's no egos in the room here. Nobody's being precious about anything. It's really lovely to work with a bunch of adults. So are we happy to accept recommendations 1 to 11? Yeah, okay. And just before we leave this item, Paddy, Ian and Jane in particular, I know there's been so many conversations going on around this. Thank you for your ongoing work. And I'd like to place on record as well my thanks to Natalie, our Chief Executive, who has been sort of plunged into the middle of all of this pretty much from day one, and other officers who've been part of supporting this work as well, because there's a lot going on around it, and everyone's calm involvement and leadership has been really important. So thank you very much indeed. Okay, that takes us to item 13, and to introduce the Southsea and North Portsea Island Coastal Schemes update, over to you, Guy Mason.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a self-explanatory, information-only report, and it's really a bit of a feel-good factor for what we can achieve as a council in terms of gaining nearly £250 million worth of inward investment to the city and transforming our coastline to some fantastic public realm, but most importantly, protecting 14,000 residents from flooding. It's a great achievement, and it's down to not just the coastal team, but also the administration and wider council as well for their support and, shall we say, sometimes steadfast ownership of some of the more difficult issues, which has really helped the scheme keep on track, which is vitally important. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Guy. I think it's important that we remind ourselves where we were when this administration came back into office at the council in May 2018, where the brand new MP for Portsmouth South had written to the government asking them not to give us the money to do this, because there was some scaremongering about a 10-foot wall being put in place across Southsea Common, which we all knew was nonsense anyway. Thank goodness the government of the day and the Environment Agency didn't listen, because otherwise we could be further behind on this project and probably facing significant additional increases in cost, which might have been even harder to fill. We are where we are, but this has not been a smooth process. We've made it into one by working cross-party, ensuring it's collaborative, working with Guy and the Coastal Partners team to make sure that we're regularly engaging with communities, and all of that has got us to a point where now people are celebrating what's happening, and the reaction to Frontage 1, as we know, was outstanding. That's the work at Long Curtain Moat, and we're expecting a similar reaction to the Theatre of the Sea, as we're all calling it, when it opens later this year. Councillor Mason.
A couple of questions which I regularly get asked by people, which I would like Guy Mason's confirmation on. The costs of both the schemes comes up to 246 million, 175 million for South Sea and 71 million for the eastern and northern sections. Given the rising costs we have seen in materials and in labour costs over the last year, are you sure that we can manage to finish the scheme within budget?
At the moment, we have every confidence that we are on track with the budget. Only 2 weeks ago, we received a £17.5 million inflation increase awarded to us by the Environment Agency to meet inflationary pressures on South Sea up to 2028. We have a similar bid or business case update report, as they're called, to the Environment Agency for an additional £14.5 million, which has already passed their area endorsement and has now gone to their large project review group for further review. I have every confidence that we should get that money in due course as well. So in answer to your question, Councillor Mason, we are adequately funded.
Thank you. The second question, which I am regularly asked, especially by residents of my colleague's ward here, Eastern Craneswater, is that we're going to develop the sea defences as far as the Coffee Cup. There is a worry that the sea defences will not be adequate beyond that area, going eastwards towards Eastney. Can you confirm that we have looked at this and we are sure that our sea defences there in the eastern part, southeastern part of the island are adequate for at least the next 20 or 30 years?
Thank you, Councillor. I can confirm that modelling has been undertaken on that eastern section of South Sea and down to as far as Fort Cumberland. And we think that the beach there is sufficiently well established that it should be maintainable, certainly at minimal cost for the next 50 years.
Thank you.
Matthew and then Lee.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Guy, for that presentation. And as I always do at this, thank you to everyone involved in these schemes. They've done a magnificent job. I always tell the story. My first ever meeting as a councillor that I went to, a public meeting, was a Seafront Traders meeting, and the subject of the meeting, this in 2012, was about the sea defences. And I know I'm a bit of a latecomer compared to Hugh to my right, who has been involved in this since at least the mid-noughties. And so it is something that is taking us through. On this paper, we see that the last portion will be done in 2028 of North Portsea and South Sea, which makes that over 20 years since the start of the preparation work for all this. And I'm going to bring it in contrast with what we were talking about earlier. Short-term decisions and thinking by central governments. This is long-term planning by local authorities coming together in this area, working with the Environment Agency and coming up with things that will not finish. And it won't be in 2028 when this finishes. That's only South Sea and North Portsea. Bearing in mind, at the moment they're working on Stokes Bay to Fareham Creek. They're then going to be working on, I think they've just started the prep work now for for the bit between Fareham Creek and Langston, which will of course involve the northern part of Port Creek from Portsmouth's point of view. And then they've got the rest of Hayling Island to do. And then finally, as Councillor Mason just mentioned, there will be the bits and pieces remaining in Portsmouth to do as well, such as Eastney itself, but not for many years yet. So this is something that is taking a huge amount of time, but is being done very sensibly, very methodically, using modelling to show where the greatest need is. Started in East Stoke on Hayling Island, which was vindicated straight away. We then went over, and then obviously North Portsea, we had the huge amount of work done around Tipner Lake, and then obviously in Southsea we started down in Long Curtain Moat because we had the seawall punched through so recently. So it's something that has been done methodically, been done very well, being done to budget, and the government has the temerity to tell us we need a productivity plan to get some money. They have the temerity, central government, that paragon of spending to budget, yeah, right, has a temerity to tell local governments to do a productivity plan. Yeah, well, look at this, Gove and your mates, and see how you do things properly. Take some bloody lessons.
Thank you for the passion, Councillor Winnington. Councillor Hunt?
We don't have much time for central government here, do we? Not at all, and with every reason to. What interests me about this is the biodiversity gain, and it's always been my particular little focus. And if you look in here on page 322 in the report, and 320, and over the page 323 and 324, you see how the biodiversity gain is being built in, and you see all the initiatives around the insect hotels and the rock pools and the way that the seawalls have been impressed so that small animals in the water and on land can be better looked after than before. And sometimes, I know that our colleague Guy will see sometimes on social media some cynicism about what's going on around here, how the council are making mega bucks out of this and brown envelopes flying about. But what is even more interesting now, Guy, is the sheer number of people who come back on and push back at these people. So the communications around this is very good. We know that, Guy, from you and your team and the council's comms officers. We know that the vast majority of people in Portsmouth and around appreciate the work that's been done on their behalf. And they know when they go along the seafront, they see the enormous... So the seafront has changed enormously. There's no question about it, but it had to because of the threat of climate change. Not being woke about it, it's real. So I'm really pleased about the biodiversity gain. You can see in these pictures, you can't see them, but you increase insect life, therefore the grass snakes improve, therefore the slowworms improve, therefore the hedgehogs come back, and all this sort of thing. So it is wonderful to see. And those people who say, well, I can't see the sea from Eastern Road anymore. Well, I got one thing. Get out your car and go take a walk and have a look at the wonderful things that have been done in that compartment. And when Southsea comes, the Southsea part comes on, go take a look at the tremendous changes around Southsea Castle, which some people are saying that there was a beach there before. There wasn't. It was a slippery, dangerous concrete slope. And if you went down it, you know, you had a lot of trouble getting back up. So that's got the rock armour down there now, but it's also got these rock pools in it. So it is a big, big change. I know it's a big, big change, but my goodness, what a really good job. And no wonder the scheme was awarded with the Coastal Management Award, the Flood and Coast Excellent Water Awards in June 22, and shortlisted for the British Construction Industry Awards in the category of Environment and Sustainability. It's damn good. And I'm enormously grateful, particularly to the officers, but also we have to say here is Hugh Mason, right from the beginning, has helped our city to achieve this. And I really hope that in May next year, that the electors of St Jude come to make sure that they have their wits and their senses about them, and they re-elect Hugh Mason.
Strangely enough, Chairman, I wish that too.
Well, thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, and some of the stuff you've drawn our attention to in the report on those pages is very significant. I mean, the form of the concrete wall is now being exported to other parts of the world as a leading example. I don't know, have we got any update on how many people we've helped so far, Guy? But a lot of interest.
We're certainly attracting attention from the Environment Agency themselves for their own flood defences and how they can incorporate the sort of work that we're pioneering on. So it's a great accolade for the city.
Amazing. Susie?
Just to say, Lee, there did used to be a little beach there, long time ago, probably before you moved to Portsmouth. When I was a kid, there was a little beach by the castle. But just goes to show how the coast has changed.
And of course, it's all been washed away by now.
Do you know which point of order that was, Councillor?
Something.
Oh, I think Peter muttered something. That was almost like a reaction rather than. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you got to the far end of Eastney when I go with the dogs, you'll find the beaches up there now. That's how the rip tide works along that part of the sea.
Of course, when I was young, which is a very long time ago, the Royal Marines used to every year run the firework display on Eastney Beach, and that was not a lesson in health and safety, I can assure you. It was an experience, health and safety it wasn't. Okay, members, thank you very much, Guy. Please pass on our thanks to the Coastal Partners team, who I know you work extremely closely with, and also to, for anyone who wasn't aware, we've now got Harry Scott working with Coastal Partners down there as well around the arts and enhancement work, and we'll hear more about that at the council meeting next week, so thank you. Yeah, I've tried my best because we had to last till 4. Okay, we need to go and check this there. So anyone watching the live stream, we are expecting some younger visitors to join us today, and we've tried to time it so that they could get here for 4 after school. So we're just going to check if they're around. Just for anyone watching at home, they are on their way. We're expecting them in the next couple of minutes.
Yep.
Bend it towards you, otherwise they can't hear you.
Yep.
And when you finish, you just turn it.
So, we have now been joined by some guests this afternoon, and this is item 14, is the Corporate Parenting Strategy 2023 to 2026. Who's leading on that? Okay.
Can't hear me? Oh, there we go. I was pressing it. Apologies. Shall I start again? I've got to take the finger off. So just to repeat, I'm Mark Jett, Head of Children We Care For. The report's to note the launch of the Corporate Parenting Strategy 23 to 26 with a recommendation that it's adopted by Portsmouth City Council. I'll assume you've read the report, but in summary, the Corporate Parenting Strategy details the responsibilities of all elected members, officers and partner agencies as corporate parents, which in simple terms means being committed to all our children and young people that we care for and care experienced young adults, continually striving to improve their outcomes as we would for our own children. The report details the role of the corporate parent, which is defined in law, and highlights the 6 overarching priorities. It details how developments of the priorities will be monitored through the Corporate Parenting Board, and notes that the Corporate Parenting Strategy was co-produced with Children We Care For and Care Experienced Young Adults. I'm now going to hand over to Adam Murphy, who's our Participation Officer, and Adam will facilitate a short presentation from a few of our children carers and Care Experienced Young Adults, who will talk about why this is so important to them and what makes for a good corporate parent.
Thank you very much. So I'm Adam Murphy. I'm going to get much closer to the mic. I'm the Participation Officer for Children and Family Service. My role is to make sure that the voice of children, young people and carers are heard. What we've come along today to sort of share, so we've got some young people represented here from our Children and Care Council. We have some carers who have all been involved in the co-production and design of the strategy as we've gone forward. And also I have some statements here from the people who couldn't be here. The question we put to the young people and carers prior to today was, why is it important that Portsmouth is a good corporate parent? Because there's a big part of their story that it's important for us to hear in terms of how it can impact their lives going forward. So I'm going to be brave first and go first, and everyone else will take their turn to share their statements, if we can please be as accepting as possible. So if I start from some of our care experienced young people, so they're young people who have left our care, who are 18 plus. So I have Emily here. She said, as a mum myself, I have learned a lot about how important parenting is. So I feel that to be a good corporate parent, you need to show a child in care and care experienced people that you are loyal to them and will always be there for them. Lewis, who's one of our care experienced young people, as most people will know, either by being a parent or having parents, what we need from our corporate parents is for the people that we deal with to be as open and as real as possible so that we can build a proper relationship with trust and support. If you can't get that from your corporate parent, where else are we going to get it from? Freya, she said, my PA is my corporate parent. So I think that the council could learn a lot by speaking to people like her to find out what is needed. And the PA is her personal advisor. Elliot said, after a poor start in life, it's important that Portsmouth are a good corporate parent and show a positive side to life and to be there to support us into independence. Joe said, a good corporate parent will truly listen to me and get to know me. They will actually support people in reaching their dreams and not limit them. Wesley said, a good parent will always be there to help you get a good start in life so that you can make your own way. Darcy said, it's important for Portsmouth to be a good corporate parent, as a lot of us growing up haven't had good role models or people to teach us morals. We rely on corporate parenting to help guide us into healthy and functional adult life. for me, without the support I had, I would probably be a lot worse of a place than I am now, and it's down to Portsmouth. And the last one I've got, which is the last I will read, is I've got a comment here from one of our foster carers, Sally. She said, "So as a foster carer, it is knowing that together we are giving children the best possible outcomes whilst under the care of the local authority. We are all working towards the same results." So that's the last you'll hear from me, and now I'll pass you over. So I'm going to bravely nominate somebody. So I'm going to pick on a carer as to be brave. So Roshanara, would you like to share your views first?
Hi, Roshna Reza. I've been fostering for just coming to 10 years, and also currently been Mockingbird Hub carer since April. So I don't want to give a statement. I'd like to give an analogy. So time is precious. You all are leaders and councillors here. So when we look at the clock, it has 3 hands, the hour, the minute, and the second. All of those hands are really important. If one doesn't move, the whole system would be down. So I just want you to stay with that analogy and think about the children in our care. Those children also are our future. They are who are going to be our taxpayers as well. So, we really need to invest in them. And this parenting strategy is really important. So as a foster carer, I believe that if we can all collaboratively think about the change and the way how we develop our strategies, our city is going to be a city of an example for our future generation. So that's from me. Thank you.
This one's going to get me in trouble if I pick one, so I'm just going to instead hand you over to both Georgia and Harvey, the chair of our Children in Care Council.
Hi, I'm Georgia, and I am a care experienced young person. And as a mother myself, I have really reflected upon my life experience and how I see myself as a parent now. To my own children. I think that we need from our corporate parent is for them to provide us with a stable, loving home where we are treated and valued the same as any parent would treat their own children, and not to be made to feel like we're a burden or a paycheck. Looking back and knowing what it takes to be a parent, it's not easy. Like, my children haven't experienced what some of these children have. And with that, we still need to be providing that stable, loving home, despite the trauma. And I think Portsmouth should aspire to do that, but I also think they do as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Harvey. I'm a child that is in care, and we really, depend on them, corporate parents. So I think, we can't fend for ourselves. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for their feedback.
Okay. Any more on the report from officers? Before I invite members to comment. No. I did think that I would go to Councillor Horton. Susie, are you happy for me to read the Portsmouth Pledge before I do, just so that everybody really understands what it is that we're focusing on here today? So if anyone is watching this at home, councillors, all 42 members of Portsmouth City Council are corporate parents, and therefore we have a really important priority around young care experienced young people, for example, the two young people we've heard from today, who are quite literally in our care and our responsibility. So one of the things that's being developed as part of this corporate parenting strategy is the Portsmouth Pledge, and it has 11 pledges on it, and the board is actually in the council chamber here, but the folks at home can't see that, so I'm going to read out what they are. And our first promise is that we promise to make sure that you have the love and affection that everyone needs. 2, we promise to always respect your individuality. 3, we promise to make sure your relationships are always at the heart of everything we do. Question 4, we promise to give you the stable and consistent experience in care. 5, we promise that your mental health and well-being will be looked after while you're in our care. 6, we will never give up supporting and encouraging you to do the best you can in school, college, university, work and your life. 7, we promise that we will still be here for you up to and beyond age 25. You are as much a part of our lives as we are of yours. 8, we promise we will always respect your identity and you, and we promise to help you to connect with your heritage and history. 9, we promise that your voice will always be at the centre of our decisions. 10, we promise to make sure you know what your rights are and how to access them. And finally, number 11, we promise to always respect and value your experiences, as you are the only people that know what it is like accessing our services. So if we're not doing any of those things, you need to come and tell us. Okay? I'll hand over now to Councillor Horton.
Thank you. And thank you for coming along and bringing this report. We see a lot of reports in here, that bringing it to life. It is more powerful than I think you will ever know, to be honest. And my name's Councillor Susie Horton, for those of you who don't know, and my job title is the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. And what that means is that along with the Director of Children's Services, Sarah, we have a responsibility to get this right. And I frequently say that it is the most important part of my job, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm actually feeling quite emotional because some of you I know, I've got to know, and it feels like walking in here that it's like my family, because I know the stories behind people and I know the work that's gone into creating this report. So what we're looking at today is a document. But what's beneath that document is, first of all, a process, and we hear the word co-production a lot, but actually this was co-produced. I've been to several events, but I know there's a whole lot of work that's been done because we genuinely want more than words. We want it to mean something, and words often are the vehicle for carrying your promises and your pledges and your intentions. And I absolutely agree with what Councillor Pitt said, that sometimes you make a promise, right, and someone points out to you that it doesn't look like you're keeping your promise, when we need to know that, because the promise is genuine. We need the outcomes of that to be genuine. So beneath this document are hundreds of lives. And actually, and what we do as a council, the decisions we make and how we listen to you and how we engage with you, means that hundreds of lives are in our hands. And it's the opportunities that can come from getting that right will ripple out across the whole city and your lives and everyone you interact with, your lives, for the better of the whole city. Some people in this room are parents. Some people are not parents, but I'm absolutely confident that everyone in this room takes this so seriously and really hears those words about as if you were our own. And that's what I mean about feeling emotional and connected, like you're my family. I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad that we've been able to do it this way in a meaningful way. Some people will be watching online, but actually what we will all carry out of here is a real depth of understanding and a commitment to taking that further. And the final point I wanted to make is to the foster carers. I know we've got a couple here, but I have made it my business to get to know as many as possible. I go to every event that I possibly can. And there is not an event where I am not completely humbled by the commitment and the sacrifices that people are making. But what they say is they get so much back. And to make a difference to the lives of children who've had not the greatest of starts, but actually can go on to have the best lives is an absolute honour. So thank you so much for coming along and bringing this to life. And thank you to all the officers for the quality and the depth of the process of the work that's led to this. I am incredibly proud at this moment.
Matthew.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you so much for all of you for coming today. Your words are so important; they are from the heart, and we would be bereft without them. And we thank you for being here and being involved with the officers at the council in putting this report together. These are 11 pledges we have to keep. We have no choice about that. We have to do it. We have that responsibility. So I'm Matthew. I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care. So the adult social care of me, part of me, understands how important it is we get things right for children, some of which we're then going to have to look after as adults as well. But the health side of me, which is well-being, is about, this is for everyone. This is all about your health and well-being, no matter what age you are, and that I'm responsible for that in that most broad sense. I can't understand your experiences as children with the experience of being in care, but what I can do is take the experience of my parents who for over 30 years elsewhere in the country were foster carers. And I saw then about what you have to do and what we have to ensure happens for children in our care, that they are treated like one of the family, that they're treated as part of our family as counsellors. I know the love and commitment my parents gave to all the children they fostered. And we fostered as a family, and I think that's one thing as well. We talk about foster carers, but actually where there's other family members involved as well, you foster as a family. And it's about making them and making sure that the children in care who are being fostered are part of that family. And if that isn't happening, then we have to be let know, and we, as in the council, have to step in and make sure that's changed. But yeah, I think these are 11 commitments which we must keep to. It's something that if we don't get this right, then the part of my role that is adult social care is going to have a lot more people who are going to need that, and that's bad for the people involved, and that's bad for everyone else as well, because we want to make sure that you as in children in care get the best start in life, and as corporate parents we have the responsibility to do that.
Councillor Mason.
Well, I think I count as a corporate great-grandparent, but apart from that, I'd like to thank you very much for the presentation today. It is important that we are reminded every so often of our responsibility as the 42 councillors for almost 400 young people in our care. I would ask the question, however, of what do you expect from us? What is expected from us as individual councillors? Because we are not hands-on. We are not the foster parents. We are not part of the administrative team. We stand one stage removed. And so what do you want from us?
Was that rhetorical, Hugh?
No, it's a genuine question because I think that anybody listening, or certainly the news, need to know the answer to that question.
I was just going to jump in, and feel free to be thinking of an answer, but actually a lot of people don't know the role of a councillor, so how would they know what they do? So I'm going to just try and give a little bit of background. When councillors are elected, they're elected in a particular part of the city. So, and they are elected to represent the views of their residents. So anyone who lives in that area has 3 councillors in Portsmouth who they should be able to go to and say, you represent me. So if you needed to feed back to the council, as in the organisation, and I know you've got different routes of doing that, and your councillor knocked on your door one evening and said, is there anything I can help you with? How are we doing? Is there anything, any message you would want to get back about your experience?
This might be rhetorical, but if, say, those pledges aren't being done, if the pledges are being done, there shouldn't be a need for us to have to come to you. So if it gets done and this corporate parenting strategy and everything gets done, then we shouldn't have to come to you. If we do, it's about worst case scenario, something doesn't happen and we do have to come to you. It's about not making those false promises, like actually coming out and saying, yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add? Anything at all? Hang on, Lee. No? Okay, now Lee.
Yeah, I may be the only person here who's actually taken someone out of care and put them into his family, which is, I took a boy out of the council's care and he's grown up now, he's got married and he has a good way in life and he just had a baby boy, and he's done it all the right way around, so I'm pleased about that. But, and I've read through some of the things here, but it was Laura at the back, didn't it? Yeah. Sorry?
Georgia.
Georgia, sorry, I don't hear so well, Georgia. You mentioned about something about a paycheck. What did you mean by that?
I think sometimes, and it's not all foster carers, and it's not. I think sometimes, and I understand cost of living, things are going up, but as a parent myself, I struggle. We don't all, and I think sometimes when you become a foster carer, like, there shouldn't be an expectation that the council should pay for everything. I think there should be the support there, but I think sometimes young people see themselves as, we're just here to pay your bills. But it's not the majority. But yeah, I just think sometimes that does come about.
I really do get it, and it's something that I play around with in my mind, and it's something that officers here, I'm sure, are very well aware of. It's about making sure that there is that love, you know, the real love that's there for the person, and I think that we don't always know that that is there, you know, as you say, in some rare cases. So I'm sure that's something that now you and I have teased it out here, the officers will take away and go over again. And what I want you all to know, from the young man up to Laura, that if you have got issues, that even though we're counsellors, we're just ordinary people like you, that you can actually come to us if there's a problem. You don't have to go to officers, you don't have to go to and we will raise the issue for you and on behalf of you as your corporate parents, individually. All right?
Thank you, Lee. Members, anything else that anyone would like to add? I've got something I'd like to add. We've got the pledge board here today. Can we, one, make sure that that's in the council chamber next Tuesday? And secondly, I'm assuming you're able to do a full colour version of the pledge that's in the the pack. Could you print off and laminate 42 copies of it, please? Because we're going to make sure that every single member of the council takes it home and puts it somewhere where they can always see it. Okay, is that good? Cool. Thank you very much indeed. And we will talk about this because it goes through full council next week, doesn't it? Although we adopt it, it'll go for noting. Is that right? Does it get noted at full council? I think it does. But we're going to do it anyway.
We're going to do it.
So, and I'm sure the Lord Mayor will not disagree. So we'll make sure the board's in the chamber and we'll make sure that every single person, because we're the cabinet, but there's lots of other councillors as well, and it's our job on your behalf, having heard your voices today, to make sure that we convey that to all the others when we see them next week. So thank you very much for coming, and to foster carers as well for being here, and Adam for leading the team and reading out those thoughts from those people who couldn't be with us, and thank you to officers for bringing the report. It is now. So there's got to be some perks to doing this job. Yes, so we will bring that as a noting item next week. It's not on the agenda, but the Lord Mayor won't mind. He'll get the sentiment behind it. Thank you to officers for today. And we are officially adopting that strategy right now. So that is now part of council policy. Okay. I think we should have a round of applause. And that concludes today's meeting. So the great news for you is you don't have to sit and work with us any longer. So thanks, everyone.